Is it Jules?
Uh-huh.
Hey, welcome.
Hi.
Oh, how's it going, man?
Good. How you doing?
Fine.
Pretty good. I called in maybe a few years ago. I had just, I guess, become a conspiracy theorist or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
With regards to 9/11 or whatever. And at the time,
there's a conspiracy about 9/11 too? Have you heard about that?
Only every week.
Yeah, I'm sure y'all are familiar with this. But anyway, at the time, y'all were like, well, this show is about, it was, atheism. We're not going to get into politics. And I was like, that's cool, whatever. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay.
But, it just seems like a lot of times conspiracy theories are a label put on people who interpret information differently from the way that other people might. For example,
And by the way, crazy is a label we put on people who interpret reality different than other people.
Oh, yeah, that's fair enough, most people I know you don't know me, but they consider me a fairly well-adjusted person. It's like when you have conspiracy theories where it's one event perhaps, or one, pivotal event where people might look at it and interpret differently. All of a sudden, how does that affect their entire, I guess, psychology? I mean, most people think I'm rational about everything else, then they disagree with me on 9/11. I guess on that issue, I tend to lose.
I know plenty of people who I would consider rational about all kinds of things, and yet they're religious, which I consider to be completely irrational.
Would you say they're all nuts?
No, and I wouldn't say that conspiracy theory believers are nuts. I mean, some are probably, but I think that an easier explanation is that conspiracy theories are seductive. They give the believer a sense that they alone have a handle on what's going on. They have this incredibly vast answer. This understanding that they're tapped into something that nobody else knows, and that everybody else is a fool, and that kind of feels good, I think.
Well, it's incredibly powerful because one of the things that drives us is this overwhelming desire to gain understanding, to come to grips with what's actually going on, to not be surrounded by mysteries. And this applies to where did everything come from, where did we come from, what is consciousness, blah, blah, blah. And when we find something like, for example, the Kennedy assassination or 9/11, and there are unanswered questions, there are explanations that are not completely satisfying, and so we look and we find this compelling and interesting story that's made up from bits and pieces of information that appears to give a much better answer, and if we chuck critical thinking out the window, we can not only accept that answer, but be satisfied that we've accepted the correct answer.
Well, earlier y'all made the statement that conspiracy theorists, they don't present evidence of their own. They just simply point out that, perhaps the government or whoever maybe is withholding evidence or whatever. The simple fact of the matter is, like, for example, people say there was no plane that hit the Pentagon or whatever.
Do you say that?
Do I? I have seen no evidence that there was. I mean, there's a whole...
You see no evidence that there was a plane at all?
Well, there's no plane
the
part.
Pentagon.
There's no engine or wings or evidence that any of those things.
So the big hole in the engine that they pulled out of there, and the reporter who was standing there, who's gone on repeatedly to say, yes, I saw it, and it was a plane.
Right. But the thing is, the government could put all that to rest. There's got to be hundreds of cameras that caught the impact. I mean, it's the Pentagon. It's secure. And honestly, releasing a couple of them. What harm would that do? That wouldn't hurt our national security.
Okay, but what you're doing is using an absence of evidence to support your suspicion. You don't have any. You don't have any evidence. You don't have any evidence to contradict the official story. You're just saying there must be evidence out there that they're not releasing, and since I haven't seen it, I'm not going to accept their story.
Well, I'm not saying there must. I mean, you don't
just
believe
said there must. You just said there must be hundreds of cameras.
Okay, well, you don't think that there are more than one?
I think there were probably several.
But why wouldn't they just? I mean, if these conspiracy theories are so, why don't they just blow them out the water and put an end to it?
Because they're irrelevant, and all of the peer-reviewed science goes to refute them. There's no peer-reviewed
I wouldn't
science.
necessarily say that.
I know you wouldn't.
But another thing that I guess that.
I'm just saying, I think there's a misconception that these conspiracy theories are taken seriously and that there's something that the government needs to squelch at this point.
Have you seen the History Channel? They have a special debunking 9/11 conspiracies.
Yes.
And and that one's great. They go through the conspiracies and they get an expert on to say, listen, conspiracy theorists say when there's smoke there's a fire, but come on, that's absurd. All the refutation they do is aimed at, I guess, the psychological condition of conspiracy theories as opposed to presenting.
Right, but I mean, let me ask you this. This was produced by the Discovery Channel and not the government. So the question is, are the people who work at the Discovery Channel part of the conspiracy, or are they being paid to perpetuate the conspiracy?
They might actually genuinely believe that conspiracy theorists are nuts. I mean, but they present.
Well,
there's no refuting something means.
No. Stop. Because here's where you've gone way wrong, and you've done it twice now. You're saying that there's a responsibility to refute your conspiracy claim, and the fact that they haven't done it, they haven't completely refuted the story that you believe, is a problem. No, sorry, that's not the way science and investigation works. If you have a claim, you have to present evidence that supports your claim. Actual evidence that supports your claim, not the absence of evidence in somebody else's, or a flaw or something wrong in somebody else's. And you don't get to just present your claim and say, this stands until you can refute me. That's not the way knowledge works.
I understand what you're saying. I guess what I'm saying is that the government's story never made a lot of sense to me, and they never really did.
Why do you call it the government story?
The story that they told that they presented, because they did have an obligation.
It's not just the government story, it's also the Discovery Channel story.
It's also the story of every peer-reviewed scientific study on the events.
It's also the story of the people who were families of the people on the planes. It's
were
the
paid off.
They were all paid off.
Prove that. That's a claim by you that is refuting actual evidence in stand, and you're making this claim.
Let me put a hypothetical.
The families who accepted the government settlement made an agreement to never sue for any reason. I mean, that was part of the.
Let me put a hypothetical to you for a second. Your son has just been killed, and the government contacts you and says, yeah, your suspicions are true, but we're going to pay you a lot of money never to talk about it. How much money would that take?
No, I'm not saying that the government admitted that there's suspicion. I'm saying the government, for everyone, there were a few people who didn't take the payoff, but the ones that, but anyway, I'm sorry, I shouldn't call it a payoff, who accepted the settlement, the wrongful death or whatever, to agree not to sue the government.
Okay, how much money do you have to receive if you're in that position to say, yeah, okay, I'm never going to talk about this?
Now, besides that, you just said that they accepted a wrongful death settlement and agreed not to sue the government. So what? That's standard. That's
not proof of a conspiracy.
But that doesn't stop them from
No, it's not proof of a conspiracy. That happens all the time for everything. You accept. Stop. You accept a settlement in lieu of agreeing not to sue them. That's what the settlement is. It has nothing to do with conspiracy. If you slip and fall at a supermarket and they offer you a settlement, it's a settlement paying you, compensating you for the damage, and you agree not to sue them.
Well, you were using the fact that the families haven't been more vocal about a conspiracy as evidence that obviously one didn't occur.
No, I'm saying that first of all, agreeing not to sue the government doesn't prevent them from talking about a conspiracy at all, so da-dump-dump. And second, what evidence would the family members of the people who died have that there is a conspiracy?
What evidence would anyone outside of the government have or possess? Like, what access or means do conspiracy theorists have to go look over the government's shoulder? And I mean, that's not, obviously,
You're making a huge argument from ignorance. We can't possibly know what went on, so my wacky conspiracy theory must be just as reliable, just as reasonable as,
I
as the
never
official
suggested
story.
any wacky conspiracy theory.
You've done nothing but that. You haven't touched on the whole story, but you made claims about payoffs and then backed off of that. You've made claims about that some people they need to be refuting the version you accept. And that's not the case. I'm going to make the claim that there's no such thing as gravity. Angels just pull our feet down to the ground. And that seems just as reasonable as any other explanation. And you can't provide any evidence to refute it. Therefore, ta-da, I win.
I don't really recall that occurring. But then again, I am a conspiracy theorist and what have you. Well, let me ask you something about Building 7. I don't want to, obviously we can't spend the whole time on specifics. But why can't we talk to the people who knew the buildings were going to collapse? The government has spent money paying engineers to do simulations, trying to figure out, the cause of the collapse. And I'm thinking, why not just talk to the people who knew that they were going to collapse? That's just common sense. If you would talk to the guys, you say, hey, well how did you know? It was just...
Which people are you talking about?
Rudy Giuliani testifies in the 9/11 Commission report that he was told when he was in Building 7 that both the towers were about to collapse, and then they don't name these people.
Because they had been burning for a long time, and there was like dust coming out of them.
Right. So why didn't the people inside, the firefighters, realize that this was about to occur? And then they go and talk. They tell an EMS
there nobody
person.
in Building 7?
No, they're in Building 7 at this time, and they realize that both the towers are going to collapse. Although it seemed to take everyone inside and people observing, I guess, on TV by surprise, but they seemed to know about it. And then when Building 7 collapsed, that building wasn't hit by any planes or anything, and the guys told them that they said, get out, this building's about to come down or whatever. And I'm like, well, why can't we talk? Why wouldn't you testify as to what you saw, what evidence you knew? This is very controversial in the sense that scientists have been claiming that they're going to come up with an explanation for why Building 7 collapsed, but they never have.
Here's what you've done. You've taken bits and pieces of factual information and strung them together in a largely incoherent story that makes no sense and is predicated on the idea that, gosh, we don't know this, and why didn't they do this, and what about this, and what about this, and ooh, there's so many what-ifs that it must be a conspiracy. That's utter nonsense.
Right. For instance, I haven't heard a really useful explanation coming out of conspiracy theorists yet about why the government actually would decide to collapse Building 7. It couldn't have been part of the let's go kill 3,000 people because as far as I heard, nobody actually died from Building 7.
No, they all got out. They told them to get out. It's about to come down.
Right, so it couldn't have been part of this idea of let's kill a whole bunch of Americans, right?
Have you seen it collapse? Building 7?
So what I'm asking is, what was the motivation for blowing up Building 7? Just, I don't think that blowing up the Twin Towers and a whole bunch of people in planes
there was
will be
evidence
enough.
inside that it was I guess it was a control station for the entire controlled demolition. Now I know you think
I see. So nobody in Building 7 who worked there, this was an office building, nobody ever noticed over the months or years that it took to set this thing up, hey, there's a big honkin' control, there's a big honkin' demolition station in
Not only that, if this was the control center, wouldn't it make more sense to blow the building up and kill the people who were in World Trade Center 7 just in case they saw something, but instead we're going to warn them and make sure they get out okay?
See, you're asking me. I would have to have been there.
Yeah, you would actually have to have a cohesive theory.
That's
the point. You'd actually have to have a cohesive theory that presents a story that actually answers questions and is backed by evidence, and that's not what the conspiracy theorists have.
I know you probably don't have time for this, but I would recommend, if you ever do, you should read The New Pearl Harbor, because the guy that writes it, he's a philosopher, and I guess he does the most rational or coherent job I've ever heard of. I guess, laying out the conspiracy theories. Because for me to sit here on the phone in 10 minutes and, put it linearly for a year or whatever.
Considering I've watched about 4 films and read about 15 websites on both sides of all this, I doubt that there's anything new in the new Pearl Harbor. And by the way, if there was, we'd all freaking know about it. It would be front page news. If there was any reason, stop. Yes, it would. If there was any reasonable, cohesive story backed by evidence that confirmed a conspiracy, it would be front page news.
Unless you think that everybody in every media organization is part of the conspiracy. Like,
you don't
everybody.
believe that the government ever covers things up, and that maybe it comes out later that they denied, and later it comes out that maybe they covered it up, like the Gulf of Tonkin or anything like that?
Sure. So?
Well, wouldn't that be a conspiracy?
Yes. Didn't we say at the top of the show?
Or anything, but
didn't we say at the top of the show that conspiracies do exist and have occurred?
So then what we're talking about is a difference of opinion on which ones have or haven't occurred. But
yeah, we're talking about a difference of opinion of whether or not there's any evidence to back up the crazy stuff that you're saying.
Right. I mean,
whether or not it's reasonable that every newspaper would not report on this.
The line of argument you're making here is that conspiracies have happened in the past, therefore this is a conspiracy.
No. I didn't. First of all, honestly, I'm sorry. I did miss the beginning of the show where you said that. But no, it sounds to me like you're suggesting that it's preposterous. To say that the government, would do something like that.
It is.
I guess paranoid or whatever.
It is.
I'm not necessarily suggesting that it's preposterous that there exist some people in government who might be insane enough to try it. I'm suggesting that it's preposterous to think that they actually pulled it off so competently that nobody from the inside ever leaked. Even the people who were directly responsible for 3,000 deaths, all the news media.
That's not even what I'm saying is preposterous.
Yeah.
The time to believe any claim at all, whether we're talking about a conspiracy theory or a God theory or anything, is when there's actual evidence to support it. If in fact there was evidence to support a reasonable belief in these 9/11 inside job conspiracies, it would be front page news. Everybody would know about it. There would be no discussion, no debate. If it was something that was reasonably supported by evidence, we would know. That's what I'm saying is preposterous. That, if you just read this book or watch this film or visit this website that explains it so much more coherently. No, the fact that somebody has explained it in such a way that you'll buy into it doesn't mean that it's supported by reasoned evidence. The fact of the matter is that while there were mistakes in the investigation, while the story is incomplete, that incompleteness doesn't support the conspiracy theories. And there have been countless, it's not countless because you can actually count them, a number of peer-reviewed scientific investigations into the events of 9/11, and the science holds up to the official story. I don't know why people call it the official story, the government story, whatever. It would involve a conspiracy of scientists and other individuals that's just, it's beyond comprehension.
Right, of course,
thousands of people.
Every single scientist is also in on the conspiracy, because otherwise some scientist might have wanted to make a name for himself by publishing something peer-reviewed that said the opposite.
And all of these various claims by the conspiracy theorists about, look at the buildings, they're falling at an almost free fall speed. No, stop, that's just wrong. Well, World Trade Center 7, how about how it fell down? What?
That's not wrong. It doesn't.
It is wrong.
Prove that there is dynamite in them.
No, it is wrong. The laws of physics dictate how those buildings will fall, and guess what? All the video evidence demonstrates that they fell according to the laws of physics. They didn't break any rules.
No one suggested they broke laws of physics when they fell.
Yes, they did. Well, they're saying there's two different models for how those buildings could collapse. One is a gravity-assisted collapse as a result of a natural burning fire and the damage done by it, and the other one is the controlled demolition model. And the conspiracy
where they
theorists,
blew up several floors simultaneously, right? Which, of course, nobody noticed that amount of charges being placed around the buildings, even though it's like the biggest honkin' office building that has thousands of people coming into work there every day. And not one person said, hey, there weren't any bomb-sniffing dogs.
That's not true either, actually. It's a document. They pulled bomb-sniffing dogs off the detail a week prior to, and there are several people who said that
so
they
it only
had shut
took
down.
them a week.
Pardon?
It only took them a week total.
No, I didn't say that. I said there are people who said that they pulled, I guess they shut down certain floors, you know, at certain times. In addition to which, there are hundreds of people claiming they heard bombs going off on the day of 9/11. The lobby was blown out, and everybody says that, you know, well, the plane.
I heard a gunshot the other day. It turned out it was. I heard a gunshot the other day. Turned out it was a car backfire. Of course, you're going to hear explosions when shit's on fire and falling apart and crashing.
Well, yeah, that's the answer. That's the standard answer. But I mean, you know, if you see the people being interviewed, they're like, we've heard explosions going off all over the place. If something blows up, that's not the same as a fire, you know. But anyway.
Yeah, and you know what? The testimony of somebody who's got a building coming down around him is a lot less reliable than an outside
way before the buildings began to collapse. No, I'm talking about, you know, like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or so before the buildings collapsed. Yes, they heard stuff and the buildings were coming down as well.
30 minutes before those buildings collapsed, those people were nice and calm and good observers? Are you kidding me?
After the building had been on fire for a long
and you're
time?
there,
you're in a burning building.
You're upset. You're not going to think, well, maybe that was just my imagination. You know.
No, it's not a matter of imagination. It's a matter of interpreting events in the chaos while the building's burning around you.
Right, there's too much chaos for people to know whether or not they.
Great. So we agree that the testimony of people who said they heard bombs could easily just have been natural explosions and noises that occur in an environment where they've never been before, where the world is collapsing around them.
Firefighters inside. I mean, I don't know. I imagine the firefighters know something about. I mean, they battle high-rise fires, you know, in New York or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, their testimony is not. You know,
is not what it does. It's not supporting the conspiracy theory. That's
no,
for sure.
It's not. Well, basically, if you keep saying that all the scientists say, you know, agree and all this.
No, I didn't say all the scientists, because you can always find a scientist who'll stand up for something or have some crackpot belief. I said peer-reviewed scientific papers, and that's what counts. That's what matters.
What is the compelling case against Osama bin Laden? The FBI says they don't really have. They promised that they would prove it was him.
What the hell does Osama have to do with this?
With 9/11? According to he's the guy who masterminded it.
I understand that. Right? You're moving from one conspiracy to another, and I think.
No, I'm not moving from one conspiracy to another. It's all related. I'm simply saying that.
I understand that. My point is, how long should this conversation go on?
Oh, listen, I know you guys got to move on. If y'all, I guess I should let y'all. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna.
Yeah, obviously, we're not going to complete a sentence.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Jules.